Welcome back to the Real Truth channel. We were looking whether or not Russia were justified in invading Ukraine. Uh, it is very, very important that we look at those dispassionately. There are two videos up on this already, and this is part three. And this is part three of the special military operation that Vladimir Putin wants to put into effect and wants indeed the West to agree to. The West did agree to these things that were going on and to peace in this region back in 2008 with the Minsk agreements, which Germany, Angela Merkel, has actually come out and said that we had no uh, intention whatsoever of honouring these agreements, and they were just put in place, and we lied to Russia to make sure that Ukraine had time to arm themselves. So even back then, this conflict, as far as I'm concerned, was already planned and already being funded by various interests. So let's look at the third tenet that Vladimir Putin wants, and he wants the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Region to be autonomous regions and be their own republics, which is not an unreasonable demand when you consider that there have been two coups in Ukraine, and Ukraine is not a sovereign nation, it's a rump state, or a banana republic, as we used to call it in the old days. Now, there are 8 oblasts that have primarily Russian-speaking people. I would be very surprised if Vladimir Putin stops before he has secured all those regions. The simple fact being that it will be the same thing over and over again if he does not. The other thing I would say is that once you have secured those 8 oblasts, and I think that would be the sensible move for Putin, would be to stop right there. We have seen the effect, have we not, of going into areas and invading areas where primarily people don't want you there. What happens is you end up with an American situation like Vietnam. And that is never a good thing to have because you will just spend years and years and years fighting insurgents. The other thing that you have to look at is that the people of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions want self-autonomy. They want self-governance. They tried to vote on it. It was called a rump vote, which was by the Americans and the Ukrainians, which was quite amusing when you consider exactly what happened in Maidan Square and how much the Americans, led by Victoria Nuland, and the National Endowment for Democracy. And if you haven't checked out the NED, I would suggest you do so. They've been very, very lively, shall we say, in donating lots and lots of money, always, always to overthrow the sitting government. And that is quite simply exactly what the CIA used to do back many years ago. For those of you who are of a younger generation, please go and check out Guatemala. When the CIA actually had a president assassinated over tinned fruit. I kid you not. Go and check it out. The other thing that we need to talk about here when it comes to shall these republics be in existence, NATO, America, and Ukraine, which we will collectively call the West, will not allow this and do not want it. The chances of pushing Russia out of Ukraine are indeed quite slim. And there is an old tenant in war that turns around and says that if they can produce more, they can produce it quicker, and they have more men, sue for peace because you're on a loser. And that's absolutely the case here. You have to look at, say, take the British Army, who number 80,000 men. Well, if they were in Bakhmut, there would be no British Army left. And that's just the reality of the situation. The 3 main tenets then that we have are Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republic. If you're going to have peace in the region, this has got to be given. The fact that you went in to protect these people is proven beyond doubt. The Ukrainians have targeted men, women and children in the Donbass. There is clear evidence all over YouTube of this happening, including burning people alive in buildings and bombing, waiting until the holiday season, and then cluster bombing men, women, and children on a beach. These were not Russian agitators, unless they were hiding a Kalashnikov in their swimming trunks. They really are not. So the lies of Ukraine have been out there for all to see. The other thing that then you look at is the denotification, as I call it, of the Ukrainian regime. Well, there is no doubt whatsoever that a coup took place and that these people were given money from various sources to build up this uprising, and that they have been responsible for the slaughter and the death of many, many people. Their ideology is absolutely hateful, and they are ethnic cleansers. Was Vladimir Putin right to go in, and is he right to get rid of these people? Remember that we hated these people 9 years ago, and we were dreading their rise. So that's the case proven there. It's beyond doubt. And the very last one is NATO expansion. And there is no doubt that NATO kept expanding, they kept being warned, and we broke the Minsk agreement. Indeed, Angela Merkel turned around and said that the Minsk agreements were only a sideline, and they were there to allow Ukraine to keep arming. So there was definitely a thought of war, or the definite joining of Ukraine to NATO right back then in 2014. There is one burning question to do with the NATO expansion, that if the Warsaw Pact was disbanded because the West were no longer seen as a threat, why wasn't NATO disbanded? If there is no longer a threat of war between America or the West and Russia, why would NATO need to still be operating? If they disbanded the Warsaw Pact, which Gorbachev did, why didn't NATO do the same? So has NATO expansion, does he have a case for going into Ukraine? Yes, he absolutely does, because we have shown that we will do it, even on a fake dossier, that we will travel halfway around the world and kill over 500,000 children just to check out that somebody doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. And we almost had World War III when Russia decided to place missiles in Cuba as a balance to America or NATO placing missiles in Turkey. They removed those missiles in Turkey, and Russia removed those missiles out of Cuba. Imagine if Russia were to place missiles in Alaska or in Mexico. The Americans would have invaded by now far quicker than the Russians did. We kept pushing them. They do have a case on all three, in my opinion. And anybody who disagrees with that just has to look at the facts. They may be horrible to face, but they are facts nonetheless. And I would urge everybody in the West to have a look at those videos and decide whether or not you think we would have done the same thing. Thanks.